So the Amazon Synod is in full swing, and I think it's worse than what most people thought it would be. We have all kinds of nonsense coming out. We have, of course, Pashima, or whatever you call her, the earth goddess. You have the pagan rituals. You have the serious discussion of female priests. You have female deacons being pretty heavily considered. You have married clergy, which is something I'm not even necessarily against. But do you trust these people to make a decision like that? Have these people shown themselves to be trustworthy in any situation? No, the talk about married clergy is just part of a way to force open female clergy and stuff like that. We have the declaration that you have to forget abortion, you have to forget gay marriage, you have to forget the destruction of the family, you have to forget pornography. This stuff doesn't matter. What matters is global warming. And what you need to do is you need to confess sins against ecology, is what some are saying. You have to confess your sins against ecology. You have to do a decade of the rosary for every for every unit of carbon you emit. That's kind of what's coming out of this whole synod. And it's really disturbing. And this is just kind of something I want to get back to. And I've said this a lot of times when I've been talking about Bergoglio and the church hierarchy in general. But I think it's something people don't really understand. When you're a public figure, it's to a certain extent your personal beliefs are irrelevant. It doesn't really matter what Pope Francis actually thinks. Like, does it actually matter if he believes that you cannot be a Christian and support the death penalty? Does it actually matter if, as one of his surrogates said, you aren't allowed to vote for Liga Nord, even though Liga Nord is like the main party that opposes gay marriage and abortion and has incorporated Catholic identity as part of its political platform? Or any of that kind of... Does it really matter whether or not Pope Francis believes that? No, it doesn't. Because as a public figure, like, he's never taken any real attempt to correct any of this stuff. And I think a lot of people in the first couple of months were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. They were willing to treat him as kind of a Mr. Magoo type figure who was just kind of naive. He didn't understand how bad the global media was and how bad global politics were. But I think that's pretty much all gone at this point in time. Because, like, what continually happens is he gives some interview, he just shoots his mouth off with some stupid off-the-cuff statement. The media interpret a certain way and put out a article on it, and his defenders are like, oh, he didn't actually mean that, they took it out of context, they mistranslated it. Is there, like, a correction that's publicly issued? No. Does he take any, does he make any effort to be more clear in the future? No. Does he stop giving interviews to the people who keep taking his words out of context? No. So I think he's accountable as if he said that stuff. And he's a public figure. He's a world leader. He leads a country and he leads a religion. It's not acceptable for him to be this inept. He has people who will coach him on interviews. So what I have to believe is, A, he's either like a complete and utter like retard, or like drunk 24/7 and has no agency whatsoever, or this is all exactly what he wants to have happen. He wants to be putting these ideas out there, but in a way where he doesn't quite cross the line into what some people would interpret as full heresy. And that's what I think he's doing. Like, the whole gay priest thing, who am I to judge? Or, like, just a lot of his comments. You can spin them whatever way you want, but the issue is he never clarifies them. So, like, one of his surrogates, who's one of the spokesmen of the conference, came out in an interview, in the press conference, in support of female priests. Now, did he denounce and reject that? Did he say, I don't agree with that at all? Did he really do anything? No. And, like, this happens with basically every issue. So, what I have to... The takeaway I think we all have to have is this is deliberate. I guess there's the two things. Either he's a complete and utter retard and he doesn't understand what he's doing, which is really scary to begin with, or this is all some malicious 4D chess plan to get his agenda passed. And I think at this point we have to assume it's the 4D chess plan. And like people have said, oh, but the Pashima statue and the pagan, he didn't formally endorse that. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's his synod. He called it. If he was at all decent a pope, and I'm not a hardcore trat, I just don't want pagan rituals. He should have come out and said, no, we aren't going to have that here. We aren't going to have the earth goddess. We aren't going to do this nonsense. We're just not going to do it. But he didn't, and it just kept going on. And you had that base guy who threw it into the Tiber, who's awesome, but I think what the takeaway has to be that he's endorsing this, that he's cool with it and he supports it. The fact that he allowed this to happen, he didn't really make a strong condemnation of it, at least not one that I'd heard. If I'm wrong about that, then I will apologize. But this just shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't be having a synod where people are like, oh, is the synod trying to like gonna maybe have female priests? Is the synod maybe going to, I don't know, declare some other weird stuff? Like, that just shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a question. It shouldn't be something that people are scratching their heads trying to figure out. This is a global media event. I don't care how scummy the media are. I think we all know the media are scum. I think we all know the media hate Christianity by and large. But that doesn't excuse you for there's a virtue called prudence, and these guys have none of it. So we just have to assume it's deliberate, and that's a huge black pill. And like some people I know who are a lot more, I guess, kind of traditional or conservative than me in religious matters, even they are like on the verge of becoming sedevacantists at this point. I think most people have said this dude's a manifest heretic, and there's something fundamentally wrong with his papacy. Now, my personal opinion, and I feel kind of embarrassed sometimes, like when I was listening to Serp and Classical Theist podcasts about sedevacantism, they were talking about all these, like the ins and outs of canon law, and I admit I don't understand really most of the nuances of this. And kind of my humble opinion, I think Francis is still legally and administratively the Pope, but his actions have taken away his spiritual and moral authority. He's lost the mandate of heaven, if you will. And until he publicly repents and makes amends and goes back to doing his actual job, he doesn't have any spiritual or moral authority, I guess, is kind of how I view it. I guess that's kind of like sedeprivationism. I don't entirely understand like the distinctions between them all, but I guess that's kind of my opinion on it. So those are my thoughts on the Amazon Synod. It's a disaster, and it's probably only going to get worse from here on out. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll talk to you real soon.